Hartosh woke up without much fanfare, his body now used to this particular schedule and rotation. The small, semi-permanent barracks they built on this side of the gateway were adequate, but left some comforts to desire. The colours were drab, and there was hardly anything reminiscent of home. Still, the air here was simply wonderful. There was something about it, perhaps carried by the wind or in the different mixture and pressure of it. Hartosh took in a deep breath and savoured it, the iris of his eyes dilating as he stretched them open. After some light stretching, he opened his trunk to retrieve a fresh uniform. He unfolded his beige pants, putting them on first. The material was lightweight and had good airflow, helping naturally cool the body. Granted, clothing was not necessarily a need for a Dakar, but every additional layer helped against fecal acid, especially the new waxy compound they now sprayed on the uniforms that created an additional acidic repulsion. Next, he took out the standard issue grey overcoat. He always disliked how heavy it felt. The overcoat had a plethora of pockets, including two heavy reinforced ones on each side that were used to carry additional ammunition. Last but not least, he adjusted his collar to properly display his prominent blue colour and the two black X's in the middle of it, indicating his rank and branch. Once done, he put on his steam pack and slung his scout rifle on his shoulder, heading over to the main command tent to get his orders for the day. Ever since the strange sighting in the sky a few days ago, it seemed the higher-ups were on high alert. Not to mention the other species that was encountered by the leader of this expedition, Scientist Chilukik. Perhaps they too were waging a war against each other and they'd be caught in the middle of it. Hartosh hoped at least one of them would be friendly towards the Dakar. Stepping inside the command building, Hartosh saw a few other scouts like him waiting nearby. Perhaps a scouting mission then, was Hartosh's first thought. He walked up to the main table where three others were. The two to the right wore blue collars like him, scouts as well. Second-rank scout Hartosh, reporting for duty. The Dakar to the left looked up from his papers to give a look at Hartosh. His demeanour changed quickly when he noticed his blue collar. Ah, yes, good. We have enough scouts now. Here are your orders. We need a party of scouts to go further than we've been before, find out if there's anything of note further out. We need more information about this possible avian species we've received reports and sightings about. The staff officer, as noted by Hartosh when he saw his silver collar, handed him a writ. Hartosh looked at it briefly and had a bittersweet smile. Double rations would normally bring a smile to any soldier, but a long-distance scouting mission meant more work as well. He could barely remember a time when they weren't using rationing, so long as the conflict with the Vik had been. You've been placed in charge, Harstock, as you are the highest-ranked scout here right now. Good luck. Hartosh saluted and left with the other two scouts to go get their rations at the supply building. Most of their food still came from their homeworld, even though game seems to be plentiful on this side. Questions about possible diseases and if it's truly safe for Dakar consumption prevented the switch to local sources. Some crops were also brought over and planted but required time to see through, if the soil could even support it. Even if this land served only as a protected area, they could grow food, it would help tremendously against the war with the Vik, as it would mean suppliers would be safe from their aerial raids. Well, you heard the staff officer, let's go get our rations and begin our mission. It was hard to not notice the supply depot, as it was one of the only two buildings which had permanent guards, the other being the gate. Most Dakar could be described as being loyal and law-abiding, but precautions were still necessary, especially considering the state of the war. Hartosh waved to the guard as he entered the building, earning a salute in return. Behind the counter, surrounded with a metal, mesh-like grid, stood the quartermaster. A grizzled veteran, at 52 years old, the old Dakar was highly respected and efficient. Those that treated him well got their supplies on time. On the flip side, those that attempted to cheat or bribe him often regretted it. Hartosh nodded respectfully in the quartermaster's direction, earning a nod in return. "What can I get you today?" came in the gruff voice of the veteran. Hartosh slipped in the writ he had just received. The quartermaster unfolded it and grunted after reading it, leaving the counter to go fetch what was required in the shelves behind him. Coming back with his arms full, he dumped the contents on the counter before addressing the scout. 1 premium ration, 1 standard scout kit, and 2 extra magazines of sabot ammunition. Thank you. Hartosh kept it short and sweet, knowing the others behind him were waiting for their turn as well. He stepped outside and waited for them to come out. Since he had time to kill anyhow, he opened his pack and made sure everything in his scout kit was in order. Starting with the sabot ammunition, 2 magazines of 20 rounds, he inspected every round for signs of defects. Nothing quite like having a defect cartridge cause the rifle to blow up in your face to make one aware of the dangers, especially when factoring the increased pressure required to make the scout rifle variant of the steam rifle work at longer ranges. Next, he proceeded to do the same with the 3 magazines of regular ammunition, before finally inspecting his rifle. Using a damp cloth, he cleaned the grime and dirt that had accumulated on it, and then did a routine inspection. Using pressure to fire rounds meant a usually clean barrel, but it was important to check for possible crack. Metal wear was the biggest danger, resulting in usually fatal incidents when letting go under high pressure. The rest of the check went by fast, making sure the proper medical aid products were there, his combat knife, the rations and canteen. Seeing both come out together, Hartosh took the lead and set the pace, the others following behind him. The base was soon left behind, and they began their trek. After a few minutes of walking in silence, the others began talking. "Figures our luck would mean that this place is already inhabited," said the smaller of the 2 junior scouts. "I personally don't care one bit for these aliens," replied the other. "Look, I agree, but we can't be fighting a war on 2 fronts. This is the break we needed. As long as whatever is out there minds its own business, let it be," added Hartosh, joining the conversation. Any of you try these big hairy animals we sometimes see when we go scout? I know they haven't approved of eating them yet, but I'm so sick and tired of these rations," asked the smaller scout. "I did hear of someone getting their hands on a smaller creature. It was fine and he shot it down, thinking it was a Veek. It was much smaller, but similar, wings and beak and all. Roasted it over a fire and he said it was decent enough. That was some weeks ago and he still seems fine, so I think the brass is worrying about nothing," answered the other. Hartosh paused and looked around. Everything was very quiet and the sun was already at his peak for the day. He crouched and turned to the others. "Good place to stop. Let's eat and rest our legs for a few before we resume." Hartosh opened his ration and looked at the contents. Packaged tidily and bundled using waterproof fibers were a cockle bar, standard serving of kudui, a slab of chutut, and a double serving of takot. To top it off, a single piece of paper with a message written on it lay on top of the food. As tradition, Hartosh read it first. "Hello, my name is Marshiska. I am 11 and I prepared this ration. Thank you for your hard work. I gave you the takot from my own lunch. You need it more than me." Reading these small notes reminded him what they were fighting for, to give a future to all Dakarians. Fighting back the tears that were beginning to well up at the image of a little one going hungry for his sake, he began to dig in. Untying the strings of the chutut packaging, he laid it out on the side and took the kudui, mixing them together. Eating the chutut, large rockworm meat usually boiled, by itself made him gag. The kudui, a lichen, helped mask much of the chutut with its strong aroma. Satisfied with his work, he began eating. Hartosh kept the takot for last, in order to make the sweet taste of the fruit last longer in his mouth. Pocketing the cockle bar, Hartosh sat for a few minutes, his legs enjoying the respite. His stomach was full for now, but he only had a protein bar left for the rest of the day. "Alright, let's dig a hole and bury these. Need to make sure we don't leave too many things to suggest our presence." Their trash now buried, the trio headed out, occasionally glancing at their map for directions. A few hours later, as they were climbing up a small hill, Hartosh heard a strange sound and motioned for the others to keep back. Slowly he crept up towards the source of the sound. No more than a dozen meters in front of him were a bunch of aliens. Hartosh paused like a deer in headlights, looking at the 8 strange aliens in front of him. They seemed to be conversing, loud, inarticulate words being thrown around, until one of them standing off to the side noticed him, drawing their attention to him. "Damn! Well, at least they aren't Veek. Maybe I can get away and report this." Looking at the strange creatures, Hartosh tried taking a step backwards, willing to pretend this meeting never happened, but the alien creatures swung strange barrel-shaped objects towards him. After more than a quick glance, they appeared to look similar to the steam gun, making him slightly more cautious about them, and stopping his movement. A bit small for a steam gun, but we don't know anything about them. Looks like they have only noticed me and not the other 2. If I make a run for it, it might mean they would capture all of us. No. It's best if it's only me. I need someone to go report this. It's the only chance I have of getting rescued. I need to remember my training, and I can make it through this, even if they try to force information out of me. 2 of the creatures shouted strange-sounding words, and he noticed them lowering their weapons. One of the creatures took out a small package from inside its clothes, and ripped open the top portion of it. The smell quickly found its way to Hartosh's nostrils by the way of a small breeze, causing him to salivate. Being on rations for the better part of half a decade, he found himself drawn in to the meaty smell. The one holding the package wound his arm back and threw it close to him, almost within his grasp. He looked at them and saw how they were holding their position. They want me to get it? His senses screamed at him that this was a bad idea, a trap. He could see no way out of the situation, however, and proceeded slowly to grab the package. Lifting the small pouch-like material to his face, he bent inside to look at dry, thin strips of meat. Placing the bag under his nostrils, he took a deep breath and felt a tingle all the way in his spine. His tongue unfurled and grabbed one piece, bringing it back to his mouth in a fluid motion. Eating something an alien had given him was risky, but so was not eating it and offending them. The first bite was nothing special, tasted like regular dry meat. The following bites got better as the flavour mixed with his saliva, and the spices became more apparent. His eyes rolled in the back of his head, the salty flavours of the meat overwhelming his taste buds. The rest of the bag was promptly devoured by mere instants later, even going as far as licking the bag clean. Hartosh's stomach rumbled, and he felt content but suddenly remembered he was being watched and tracked his eyes back on them. The creatures appeared amused, their mouths turned into smiles. Another of the creatures stepped forward and held something in his hand, waving it at him. Resigning himself to his fate, he proceeded to approach the creature slowly. At least if they killed him, he'd die with a full stomach. Chilukik massaged his eyes. After a day and a half of work, he had finally finished the mountain of paperwork on the missing scout. He had only taken a few steps towards his bed for some much-needed rest when he noticed a quite peculiar sound. The sound slowly grew, the windows began to shake, and he felt it all the way in his bones. Chilukik burst through the door, then quickly covered his ears, for the sound was now deafening. He looked around for the origin of the roar, and when he saw it he could hardly believe his eyes. A metal beast hung in the air, only a few meters above the ground, slowly coasting the perimeter of the outpost. Black smoke began to bellow from the hovering beast, and it appeared to become unsteady. It rolled to one side and began to drop in altitude. While crashing to the ground, it tossed tundra and dirt around, coating a few buildings nearby in grime. The silhouette of the now lifeless beast at rest on the ground began to appear through the settling cloud of dirt. Chilukik began to run towards it. He had to get a closer look. He had to see what exactly it was.